a very good morning or good afternoon to everyone on the call. Thanks for joining. Yes, my name is Tina, and I've lived and worked in agriculture for all of my life, in both in North America, Asia Pacific, and Europe, in marketing, sales, business development, and increasingly business leadership roles, and particularly in smallholder markets. And so the focus of my discussion today is going to be exemplifying some of the opportunities as well as the challenges faced by smallholder farmers who play a critical role in addressing the challenge of being able to feed 8.5 billion people sustainably and nutritiously by 2030. And then I'll be handing over to Renee, who's going to talk more about the US market and the developed market context. So let me kick off. From the perspective of how will we feed 8.5 billion people sustainably and in a nourishing way by 2030, for me, it really comes down to three key pillars. One is around leadership, one is around technology, and the other is around partnerships. Really, it's important that we take a holistic view of the entire food chain, looking both at the waste as well as at the productivity side of the arguments, in order to believe that we can have both a sustainable, robust, and fair and equitable supply chain in the coming years, and certainly by 2030. And in that context, when we start to think about what could be different and what could some of the solutions look like, I believe passionately and from my experience that we need to start first with the grower. What are the pain points and issues that they are facing in changing from the current practices and behaviors into something new? And what can we do about it? That leads me on to the second point, which is partnerships and collaborations are going to be critical to think again about more holistically about those challenges, and how together with existing and new actors can we put together compelling solutions that can address some of these very critical pain points and really make a sustainable difference at scale. And the third area is that in everything that we do, we need to be walking the talk in terms of looking at the benefit to not only the consumer or the customer, sorry, in terms of the farmer, but also in terms of society and the environment. And I believe it's incredibly important, not only that this is just the right thing to do, but it actually means that you're running a much better business as well. So it's a win-win-win. So let me maybe bring it to life a little bit with a couple of stories or examples that show the benefit of how technologies, partnerships, and leadership can really make a difference at scale in the smallholder market. The first story I'd like to share is for a small corn farmer in northern India, and his name is Ravi Kumar. And I'd like you to imagine that I was walking into his field, and he's there with his white longi on and a great big smile, and we're standing in front of his corn hybrids, and he's growing, in this case, he was growing Syngenta corn hybrids. And I asked him, what's your been experience? Are you happy? And he said, yeah, I'm incredibly happy with the extra yield and the better quality I'm getting, and I get a much better price in the market. I said, so how much land do you have? And he said, I have 2 hectares. And how much of our corn seed are you growing? Expecting him to say back to me 2 hectares. And he said, 1. And I said, but why only 1? And he said, well, if the rains don't come, I won't be able to afford to buy new seed, and I won't be able to afford to feed my family. And nobody should ask anybody to put themselves on the line and in such a position. I heard this same story for the rest of my trip across northern India, talking to farmers, talking to distributors and retailers, and talking to my team. And really what came out from this was the opportunity to think differently about how we could assist this farmer in terms of his or her critical pain point, which was rain and insurance. They needed risk management. So long story short, what we were able to do was put in place insurance in a bag. So with each and every bag of seed bought, the grower would be able to register for rain insurance by scanning it with their mobile phone. That would enroll them for 2 or 3 weeks, depending on the geography that they were in. And then we would take the opportunity, and did with an insurance company, to reinsure ourselves against those claims, and to work and be able to be connected with the farmer, in this case Ravi Kumar and many of his friends, in order to be able to provide them with advice in terms of how to plant the seed, how to nourish the seed, and how to protect it from pests and diseases, so that he and everybody else had the best opportunity of raising a really, really great crop, as well as being able to sell it and to get a really good price for it. Now, in the old world, we would have thought about it purely from what we sold. And the difference here is that we thought about it from the perspective of what are the challenges that this farmer is facing in adopting our technology, and what can we do to remove those challenges by partnering with new actors, in order to be able to offer a much better service, or product and service for the farmer, and to significantly transform his or her ability to adopt better technologies in a sustainable way, raise their incomes and their livelihoods, and in doing so, that of course, as Syngenta, we profited as well. So that's the first example. The second example I'd like to share is around drones, which perhaps you might think about from the perspective of taking photographs, or in the more sci-fi world in terms of product deliveries to your home. But in the case of smallholder farmers, this also opens up a huge opportunity for the safer application of product. Today, if a farmer in a rice paddy would like to be able, and most of these are women, would like to be able to apply product to protect their crop, they need to walk in water that is at least a foot deep, in sweltering 40°C weather, and often in a situation where there are snakes and other not so pleasant things in the paddy at the same time. But the other big issue is that the maintenance of knapsack sprayers can be variable at best, and so they can leak. And this is definitely not good news if they're using a chemical. That's not what we want. So in addition to maintaining our education around maintaining the knapsack sprayers, we also saw an opportunity with the introduction of drones to be able to provide an Uber-like service where farmers would be able to order on demand, that a drone would come in and apply product to their field, which had a numerous number of benefits. The first was from a health and safety perspective, reducing risk and exposure. The second was from a perspective of knowing what product was used, when it was used, how much of it was used, and that therefore it was used properly. And the third was that the coverage and the timing of application was much better. So the benefit the farmer got from the application of this product was also good. And it generated rural employment, because a big issue that we face in rural emerging markets is a lot of labor migrating to cities in order to find jobs, and therefore critical labor shortages in agriculture as well. So a really great opportunity for starting something new, providing a very valuable service, and giving back to the community, not only in terms of a better crop, better yield for the farmer, but also for the community and society at large in terms of new business opportunities and new employment. The final aspect, which will be a link to Renee and what she shares with us as well, is around the data. So now we had an opportunity to know what was being grown, how it was being grown, and that it was following all of the best standards in terms of the recommendations for products. And that provided us with an opportunity to start opening up conversations with grain companies and food companies around contract purchasing of the produce that the farmer was producing. That was terrific from the perspective of the grain producer and the food company in terms of getting access to a quality and reliable source of rice or coffee or anything else, but also importantly for the farmer themselves in terms of a guaranteed income and a better price, because they weren't going to, because they were getting rewarded for doing the right thing, and in producing a crop with traceability in terms of how it had been grown and that it had been grown to the best standards. So those are two stories or examples in terms of how technology, firstly, focusing on the pain points and issues of the farmer, thinking holistically around how to solve those with technology, and showing the right level of leadership in terms of building coalitions and partnerships can make a really big difference. But the other really important partner in the emerging markets is also the government, because they control globally the investment of around 51 governments control around 2/3 of the global food production at a value of around $570 billion a year. And that's a statistic from the World Economic Forum in January of 2020. So it's the examples I've shared so far have been around private to private partnerships, but equally important is the opportunity and has been the opportunity to work together with governments to look at how they spend the investment that they put into agriculture in terms of improving fundamental infrastructure around roads, warehousing, irrigation infrastructure, et cetera, and education, which is critical, which can make a lasting and sustainable difference in terms of the productivity of agriculture across emerging markets, and the education that underpins that sustained change. So as I conclude before handing over to Renee, I think what's really important here is that we think holistically across the food value chain in terms of the pain points being faced by the grower, in this case, the producer, the role of technology in transforming how they're growing their crops, and how companies such as Syngenta or BASF or Bayer or others can help them grow that crop in a more sustainable way, and make connections to those who would like to purchase that crop so that you have a far more sustainable food chain. The data that comes from this provides huge opportunities for assisting growers in growing better crops across seasons, across different temperatures and climates. It also provides a rich source of information for R&D programs and other critical aspects of running your business. And partnerships in terms of bringing people together to open up new opportunities for value creation and for making a difference at scale. So from that perspective, I will now hand over to Renee to allow her to introduce herself and to share the perspective from the developed markets perspective.